Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
So, welcome to this class. We were looking at this G matrix, that is the matrix given out by the G company. We looked at how this matrix is to be drawn and what does it really signify, called the G business screen in the in actual parlance, but known as G matrix. So, we listed the steps to draw the G business screen, that is 5 steps, 4 steps to go about drawing the business screen. Now, when you look at the type of strategies that can be drawn, this is presented to you in this slide. Let us say your business strength goes let us say from strong to weak, you are going this side. In the market attractiveness, you are going from low to high. Let us say with respect to a particular unit of the company, your business strength, that is the business strength of the unit of the company, is strong and the market attractiveness is also high. That means to say the growth of market can be expected to be above the average, that is above the average of 10%. Then what is going? What should be the strategy? The strategy should be to protect position, that is invest to grow at maximum digestible rate. That is, there can be investment, but this investment has to be taken note of or has to be made taking note of the growth of the market. Concentrate effort on maintaining strength. This is the top left block. Now, similarly, suppose your business strength is medium, but the market attractiveness is very high, then what should be the strategy? It is a challenge for the leadership. So, the leadership should try to cash in on this and try to bring this business strength also to a strong position. So, you have a market attractiveness which is high, but somehow the business strength has been medium. Now, you find out how you can bring it to the left corner cell, that is the strong and high cell. Then build selectively on strength, this could be the other strength strategy. Then reinforce vulnerable areas. So, wherever you find that the company, the business units needs to tighten up the belt, that is the place where you just start tightening, so that you do not have shortcomings. Contrasted to this, let us say you have a weak business strength, but a high market attractiveness, then what should be the strategy? Your business strength is weak, but the market attractiveness is high. So, this strategy advocated is build selectively. What do you mean by that? That is specialize around limited strengths. seek ways to overcome weaknesses, withdraw if indications of sustainable growth are lacking. So, you find out what is your strength, that is what is the unit strength. You specialize around that limited strength. In other words, this strategy is what is called building a propitious niche. So, you create a niche strategy in the marketplace. This is a niche market. So, you have some limited strength, around that build a propitious niche. So, you seek ways to overcome weaknesses, withdraw if indications of sustainable growth are lacking. Now, compared to this, let us say come to the next 3 cells. What should be the strategy? Business strength is strong, market attractiveness is medium. What is the type of strategy that the firm should adopt? With respect to that unit, again build selectively. What do you mean by build selectively here? This selectively building, that is the topmost cell here, and this selectively building is slightly different. Kindly note that. What do we mean by this build selectively? This is invest heavily in most attractive segments. So, find out which is the segment which is most attractive. Some product segment or market segment might be very attractive, invest in that. Build up ability to counter competition. So, you should be able to take on competition and emphasize profitability by raising productivity. So, in other words, you try to, this is the time for you to put on your lever on this productivity, that is enhance this productivity. Maybe you make use of your learning curve experience or whatever, and try to see that you build selectively that particular unit or that particular product line. Now, let us say you are at medium business strength and the market attractiveness is also medium. So, it is not, it is hovering around the average. What do you mean by market attractiveness being medium? It means it is hovering around the average, then average growth rate of the market which you consider in the Indian situation. So, around 10% of that. What do you do for that? Selectivity stroke manage for earnings. What do we mean by this? So, here also again selectivity is involved, managing for earnings is involved. What do we mean by this? Protect the existing program. So, what is important for you is your strength is there. So, you have invested some money, you have entered the market. So, time for you to protect your market and the market segment and concentrate investments in segments where profitability is good and risk is relatively low. Kindly note this. So, enter into segments where your risk is low, do not enter into segments where the risk is very high. So, this is the second cell here. Now, suppose let us say your business strength is weak and the market attractiveness is medium, then what is the type of strategy that is suggested? Limited expansion or harvest. What do we mean by this? Look for ways to expand without high risk. Again note that the strategy suggested is do not take high risk, otherwise minimize investment and rationalize operations. Suppose you are not sure about the risk involved, what should you do? Minimize the investment and rationalize the operations. So, this is the way you can go about in these 3 cells, that is where your market attractiveness is medium and your business strength is going from strong to weak. Now, come to the bottom of this screen. So, your business strength again goes from strong to weak, but the market attractiveness is low. What do we mean by this? When the market attractiveness is low, the growth of the market is below average, then what do? You have a very strong business strength, that is the business unit is having a very strong business presence, maybe it is a leader type of thing. So, that presents itself in the BCG matrix as a strong cash cow. So, with reference to the BCG matrix, if you start relating, it may come as a strong cash cow. What should you do in that such a type of a situation? Protect and refocus is the strategy that is advocated. You protect yourself, that is the unit should protect itself and refocus. What do we mean by this? Manage for current earnings. So, without great investments, you start managing the current earnings. Concentrate on attractive segments, defend strengths. So, that means to say you are trying to see whether how your earnings can be, the flow of earnings can be retained without taking great risks, because you have established yourself in that segment already. So, you are you know that you are a more or less a leader, a strong cash cow type of thing with respect to the BCG matrix. So, that type of unit you can do this. So, in other words, what are we trying to do in this type of strategy mapping, which strategy screen mapping which you are drawing here? You are doing some micro management here. Earlier there, if you call it macro, you are doing some micro management here. So, you are going a little more in detail. So, the next cell where your business strength is medium, but the market attractiveness again low, what should you do? Manage for earnings. What is the type of this is the strategy? What do we mean by this? Expand on this. Protect position in most profitable segments, upgrade product line, minimize investment, do not invest, this is the type of thing. So, wherever however as far as possible try to keep your investment very low. So, this is the type of thing which you normally do. Then divest, that is when your strength is weak, this is a case for divesting, or you are going into the docks, similar to the docks type of scenario with respect to the BCG matrix. Sell at that time, that will maximize cash value, that is salvage value which you get from the whole sale should be maximum. Cut fixed costs and avoid investment meanwhile. So, try to avoid the investment, try to cut the fixed costs, try to make the best possible use of the situation. So, this is the type of scenario which you normally try to get into this type of this thing. Now, if you just reading out some type of factors with respect to industry attractiveness and competitive position in the Indian scenario with respect to this screen. This is given to you in my book, page number 127. So, what are the factors determining industry attractiveness, and what could be the typical weightages that could be assigned to these factors? So, the factors which you can list are the size of the market. A typical weightage could be about 10%, then the rate of growth of sales and cyclic nature of business, you can give a 15% weightage. Then the nature of competition, including vulnerability to foreign competition, kindly note this point. Now, whatever might be the market that you may be in, the Indian markets have more or less opened up. So, you may not be able to prevent even a foreign player entering that particular market. So, given that type of a scenario, you must take that as an important factor for industry attractiveness, that is the nature of competition including vulnerability to foreign competition. A typical weightage for that could be 15%, then susceptibility to technological obsolescence and new products. What do we mean by this? Suppose your product is dependent on technology upgradation constantly, and the technology that you have used for the manufacture of the product, suppose it becomes obsolete, then you have very little to prove in the market with respect to the product, because the technology itself has become obsolete. The typical example could be that of the Indian telephone industries. So, the type of technology they used to have in the 60s, 70s, that is the crossbar and the Strowger technologies, when it came to the 80s, started getting replaced by the electronic systems. When it started getting replaced by the electronic systems, typically the EPABX systems, what was happening? One set of skills which people acquired in crossbar or Strowger, all that became redundant, not useful to the company. The technology itself became obsolete. The result is that many thousands of people who were engaged in this crossbar and Strowger technologies, their skills could not be made use of by the company. In other words, the company was forced into a position of paying salaries to these people without they being very productive to the company. So, the company what did it do? It said, let us retrain them in electronic exchanges. So, the products, that is the electronic products. So, instead of the crossbar or the Strowger, the mechanical systems, they started getting into these electronic systems. They said, okay, get trained in this PCB technologies. Fine. By what had happened by that type of a time? This is how, these are some organizational problems which a typical public sector like ITI encountered. They found that many of these employees were upwards of 45 years of age. Now, the company is asking them to retrain themselves in a new field of technology. So, they have got less number of years to really serve the company. Their argument was, we have served this company for more than 2 decades now. Why is the company asking us to reorient ourselves? So, why can't the company leave us alone? This type of a scenario. So, the training themselves in PCB technology for them was calling for sharper eyesight, which they were lacking at that age, and the sharper welding which was required. So, which was not forthcoming at that age, all those types of things mattered for them. So, the argument from the labor side was, why is the company forcing us to do this? Now, from the company side, if they do not force them, they do not have a job for them in the years to come. So, this is the type of scenario which you can be in when the technology becomes obsolete. So, when the technology becomes obsolete, whatever the competitive advantage you had, that is the company had or the business unit had, vanishes. When it vanishes, then there is very little that you can do. This is a type of scenario which companies should try to avoid as far as possible, but sometimes they are not able to avoid, like the one case, this case which I mentioned. So, entered into this technology this thing crossbar or Strowger, found that it is not the one which is useful, then found it very difficult to retrain their labor, all those types of things. Now, this can be given a weightage of 10%. Then what about entry conditions and social factors? What is the entry condition? Some of the in the present Indian scenario, you can enter virtually every market and every product. That is, as a manufacturer, there is very little to stop you from manufacturing a particular product. You name whether it is a health product or whether it is a cosmetic product or whether it is some other product, yes, you are free to make your entry into that product segment, because the government has liberalized the rules for operation. So, this license Raj, which we used to refer before this liberalization, that is for manufacture of anything, you should have had a license. So, if you do not have a license, you cannot enter that particular sector or you cannot enter that particular field. Now, the question that you may ask is, can we manufacture without license now? No, you cannot, but getting the license is made much easier. This is what has happened in this LPG era. Now, why are we doing all that? Is the entry conditions has been simplified, and the social factors. What do you mean by social factors? Government encourages industrialists to set up units in backward areas of a particular state. Why are they encouraging these business units to be set up in the backward areas of a state? It will help in creating employment opportunities for the local people, and to that extent the migration to cities can be stopped. This is the laudable objective of the government. Now, in order to achieve this, the investment should flow to the rural areas, but somehow it has not flown to the rural areas to the extent that was desired. So, you find a large number of concentration of industries. If you take the state of Karnataka, let us say, the maximum concentration of industries is in and around Bangalore only. So, the government is now trying very hard or trying to woo the industrialists to go to different cities, like the next rung of cities, whether it be Bangalore or Hubli Dharwad or Mysore. They are saying that why don't you go to Mysore, why don't you go to Hubli Dharwad, why don't you go to this Bangalore belt, set up your units there. So, in other words, the government is goading these industrialists to go to these different locations, so that the social factors can be addressed. This can be given a weightage of 10%. The profitability, which is the one which is the key for business. So, every business, why are you entering a business? You want to maximize your profits. Whatever one might say, you are not there to make losses. That is, the unit is not there to make losses. Whether it is the unit with business unit with respect to a company or the company as a whole, it is not there to make losses, it is there to make profits. So, profitability gets a very high weightage. Here it gets 40%. So, when you sum up the weightages, that is, you sum up the weightages from the size of the market down to profitability, the total percentage should add up to 100%. So, this is the way distribution is made. Similarly, with respect to the competitive position, how is the distribution going? The factors that can be considered are the market share and capacity. A typical percentage could be 20%. Then the growth rate, that is a market growth rate, a typical weightage could be 10%. Then the location and distribution, so nearer to the market, then the logistics, cost of logistics will be less, then it is another 10%. Then the management skills, how good is the company's management, you can give 15% for that. Then the workforce harmony, that is loss of working days, let us say company labor goes all of a sudden on strike. So, maybe the trade unions are very active, things like that, then what is going to happen? Your production is going to be hit. So, suppose that situation is not there, let us say there is a lot of harmony in the workforce, which is what the company really wants, that can be given 20% weightage. So, if you really consider a state like West Bengal, it finds it very difficult to attract investment. Why is it? Because the climate, the labor climate in West Bengal and then in Kerala, okay, trade unions being very attractive, very what do you call, highly energetic. So, fighting for their rights or whatever. So, the industrialists become wary of investing in these states, because the industrialist, after having invested, he does not want to face day in and day out problems from labor, he would like to avoid. So, this is called a salubrious labor relations climate, which should be in existence for the industry to be attracted to this. Then the workforce harmony, then this typical weightage could be about 20%, then the technical excellence including product and process engineering, again connected with your technical skills, a percentage could be, weightage could be about 20%, and the image of the company, sometimes let us say a company like TVS cashes in on its image in the south. Similarly, a company like Tata's cashes in on its image throughout the country. So, even a company like Tata's had lot of problems, if you see, when it wanted to set up its car unit in a state like West Bengal. So, with all its brand image and things like that, still the company faced terrific problems in starting its unit and had to relocate itself to a different state, now doing very well in Gujarat. So, the what was lost to West Bengal became profit to Gujarat. So, what was a loss of investment to West Bengal became an investment to Gujarat, and the Gujarat unit is doing very well. So, this is the way things can happen in the competitive position. So, even in competitive position, it is not just the units of the company, but sometimes the states also, they also tend to get hit in the whole process. So, this is these are some examples for this. Now, after this G matrix, let us move to the next matrix. The next matrix that we can think of, I have given in this particular table with respect to the G matrix only. the hydraulic pump market, what were the attractiveness factors and what were the competitive position, what are the factors for competitive position, what can be the weightage, the rating going from 1 to 5, what did this company's business unit, that is a hydraulic pumps market, get. It got with respect to market attractiveness 3.70 and with respect to competitive position 3.40. What has been presented in my book, if you really see on page 127, I have drawn on these factors and tried to modify them to the extent that may be useful to the Indian conditions. This is the way the typical Indian scenario works like with respect to industry attractiveness and the competitive position. Now, let us go to the next matrix. The next matrix which you can think of using in a typical situation is what is called the McKinsey matrix, again used by this company, the General Electric company, and whatever they have used, I have presented to this as a typical Indian company's this thing which is presented in this particular slide. So, and that is presented as a table on industry attractiveness and competitive position, which I just described on page 127 in the book. So, typically the McKinsey matrix used by this GE company with a slight modification. Now, using all these approaches, you can, the Shell company came out with a directional policy matrix. This directional policy matrix is similar to the GE business screen. It was adopted by the Shell Oil company in the US, that is Shell is as you know a well known oil company. I am reading from the same page, that is 127. This matrix is depicted in this figure 7.7 in this book. What is the type of thing which is important? Now, if you go to this particular slide here, this Shell's directional policy matrix looks at sectoral prospects, because it considered the oil sector. Considering the oil sector, it is going from unattractive to attractive. The unit's competitive position is going from strong to weak. Now, when that is a type of thing which is taken, how do the cells look like? The cells look typically like this. It is this 3 by 3 matrix which is presented here. So, that means to say there will be 9 cells. So, a typical this thing could be when you are your unit's competitive position is strong and the sectoral prospects are attractive, then you are the leader. Okay. How does the leader, that strategy is given in the table down below. If you see, suppose you are the leader, your business prospects are very high, your competitive capability is very strong, then what is the recommended strategy? High priority with all necessary resources to hold high market position. So, accord high priority with all necessary resources to hold high market position. So, this is the put your efforts to see that you are really the leader in the marketplace, do not give up the leadership position. Now, suppose the sectoral prospects are attractive, but the unit's competitive position is not strong, let us say it is average, then what is the strategy advocated? Try harder. What is the try harder? Allocate more resources to move to the leader position, allocate more resources to move to the leader position. So, you should try to move to the come from here to this leader position. What is the third cell where your competitive position, that is the unit's competitive position is weak, the sectoral prospects are attractive. So, the sectoral prospects are attractive, but the unit's competitive position is weak. Then what is going to happen? The strategy that is advocated is double or quit. That is, if you are not able to pull along, come out of the whole scenario. That is, pick products likely to be future high flyers for doubling and abandon others. Do not keep on having all these sentimental values, because in this competitive market there is no point in having all these types of product lines which may not sustain themselves. This is the type of thing which is coming in. Now, what about the, suppose your unit's competitive position is, let us say, going from strong to weak, but the sectoral prospects are average. Then what is going, suppose your unit's competitive position is strong, but the sectoral prospects are average. What can be the type of strategy? You may be a leader or you may not be a leader, both are possible, but growth strategy is what can be identified. So, the strategy that is recommended is growth. So, what do you mean by growth? The thing is, may have some strong competition with no one company as leader, allocate enough resources to grow with market. So, there may not be a leader who might have been identified. By allocating more resources, you may become leader in the marketplace, this particular marketplace, though the sectoral prospects are average. What about the next one, that is this cell where you are having the unit's competitive position as average, the sectoral prospects are also average. The strategy advocated is custodial. What do we mean by custodial? May have many competitors, so maximize cash generation with minimal new resources. So, do not try to invest too much money. So, what should you do? Try to find out how much cash can flow in, similar to the cash cow type of a situation in the BCG matrix. Now, what about the, suppose the unit is competitive position is weak, sectoral prospects again average, what should you do? The strategy advocated is phased withdrawal. This phased withdrawal, what does it mean? Slowly withdraw to recover most of investment. This is the same when your strategic the unit's competitive position is average and the sectoral prospects are unattractive. This is the same strategy that is advocated. So, what are you trying, what is the strategy that is being advocated? Slowly withdraw to recover most of investment, that is salvage your investment to the extent that it is possible. So, just let it not go down the drain, that type of scenario. Now, suppose your unit's competitive position again goes from strong to weak, but the sectoral prospects are unattractive. What is the type of strategy that is suggested? Your unit's competitive position, that is a company's unit's competitive position is very strong, but the sectoral prospects are unattractive. So, similar to the cash cow type of a scenario, what should you do? That is, you should try to generate as much cash as possible. See how the cash can be generated, but do not invest. So, the strategy that is advocated is cash generation. Then what is this strategy? Spend little cash for further expansion, that is, keep your investments minimum and use this as a cash source for faster growing business. So, take this, put this money in different businesses where the growth is higher. that is more than this average. So, this is the type of strategy that is advocated. Now, we looked at this cell already, same as the phased withdrawal, same for this weak position and the average sectoral prospects. Here it is the average units, the units competitive position is average, but the sectoral prospects are unattractive. So, the same phase withdrawal is advocated. Now, let us say the units competitive position is very weak and the sectoral prospects are also unattractive. So, you have a situation where the units competitive position is weak and the sectoral prospects are also not attractive. In that type of a scenario, what should you do? In such a type of scenario, the strategy that is advocated is to disinvest, that is come out of the whole market as far as possible. So, assets, what is the strategy? Assets should be liquidated as soon as possible and invested elsewhere. So, come out of this whole scenario quickly, do not keep on hanging around in this scenario. So, this is the type of strategies that are advocated by this Shell's matrix. This is the typical Shell Oil Company's matrix, which was used by Shell Company. If you really see, there is some similarities with respect to the G business screen as well as the McKinsey matrix, which I just gave you. Using or drawing upon all this, the PIMS model was suggested. What is this PIMS model? This is called profit impact of market strategy. It was first started at the General Electric company only, then it moved on to this used later by the Strategic Planning Institute for portfolio analysis. What does it do? It makes use of the multi-dimensional cross-sectional regression studies of profitability of more than 2000 business units. So, they took some 2000 business units across the United States, cross sectional data, did a regression modeling, came out with analysis of this 2000 business units. Then what did they do? Using this, an industry characteristic, that is business average profitability is developed and it is compared with the performance of the company concerned. So, you develop a business average profitability, find out with respect to that, it could be a sort of a lookup screen for the company. Where am I with respect to the business? Where is my profitability? Is it above average or is it below average? Suppose it is below average, then it is cause for concern for me, that type of scenario. The model uses past data to develop statistical relationship instead of judgment weights used in the GE business screen. So, the essential difference is it makes use of past data and but there is criticism also of this model. What is the criticism? It makes use of a heterogeneous population. So, it is not something which is from the same sector. So, different types of businesses are taken at different periods and this matrix is drawn. And how does it really, what is the type of conclusions that this model or matrix draws? This model draws, according to this model, profitability is closely linked with the market share. 10% improvement of profitability corresponds to 5% improvement in return on investment. So, 10% improvement of profitability corresponds to 5% improvement in return on investment. The rationale is given by using the experience curve effect, which implies that the average cost per unit will reduce with an accumulated position. The average cost per unit will reduce with an accumulated production, but there is a caution. It has to be recognized that larger companies with better management, quality management techniques can exercise greater market power. Now, there is one more, there are two more matrices which are listed given here in the book. The next matrix which is listed makes use of the product life cycle approach. This is what is typically called the Arthur D. Little Companies matrix, presented to you on pages 128 and 129 of my book. So, considers the different stages of PLC with the business strength. The business strengths are classified according to the what do you call the PLC. You can be going from weak to dominant, and according to the PLC it can be going from embryonic to decline. So, the businesses are classified according to business strength as weak, tenable, favorable, strong or dominant, that is the vertical axis. The horizontal axis has the 4 stages of the PLC, that is embryonic, growth, mature and decline, that is maturity and decline. What is the type of strategy recommended? The strategy recommended in the growth and embryonic stages is to build the business when the business strength is weak. For businesses in the mature stage with dominant to favorable business strength, hold strategy is recommended. For businesses with strong and dominant position in the declining stage, harvest strategy is recommended. For businesses which are weak and in the mature stroke decline stage, the return on investment is unacceptable. If you really see, there are so many cells in this product life cycle where the return on investment, that is the ROI, is unacceptable. So, when something is unacceptable, what will you do? The strategy recommended is to divest those units as quickly as possible, so that you can salvage as much of investment as possible. So, this is the type of strategies that you normally recommend at this particular point of time. So, this is so in other words, what are you trying to do in the Arthur D. Little Companies matrix? You are looking at business trends on the one side and you are looking at the product life cycle on the other side. What do we mean by saying you are looking at the product life cycle? You are looking at all the 4 stages of the PLC, and the business trends you are going from weak to dominant or strong, weak, tenable, favorable, strong, dominant. Dominant can be very strong. So, for each of these different business strength positions, and depending on that PLC position that you are in, that is the unit is in, you recommend a strategy. Suppose it is you are in the embryonic stage and your business strength is very weak, then what is you are a candidate for divestment. Again, you can be you can think of divesting. So, if you are not able to develop, so similar to that type of a scenario. Now, there are so many cells which can be where your return on investment ROI is unacceptable. So, when it is not acceptable, so you just come out of that business to the extent that it is and salvage your investment to the extent that it is possible. So, these are the strategies that are recommended by this Arthur D. Little Companies matrix. Now, we will look at this Hofer's product stroke market evolution matrix in the next class. Thank you.